So hi guys, hello. There we go. Right, just a quick intro about me. My name's Richard Brooks. I'm the CEO of a company called K International. K International are a language translation company based in Milton Keynes. We do, largely speaking, we work in two sectors. One sector is the UK government, so we do high security work for UK government. So that would be work for the army, work for the police, prisons, health service, that sort of thing. Mainly translating for the diverse home market of the UK. The other half of the business is we work for corporates. So we help corporate companies or big brands export their brands to new markets. So for instance, if Tesco is going to export their products to Central Europe, we're there helping them to get their products ready for that particular market. I'm an MBA from Cranfield University. Normally that gets a cheer, not today. Boo! I'm also the director of the Association of Language Companies. We're based out of the States, but have a worldwide coverage. 40 staff. We've probably got, say, thousands of translators. Too many to count really, because it's based on a project by project. In order to be a translator, you need subject specificity. That's the right word. But we need to pick the right guy for the right job. So we've got a core team of 40 managers in Milton Keynes. You'd be very welcome to come and see us should you ever venture up that way. One question I always get asked, I always get the same sort of questions asked when we run through this. So literally, I was on the stand yesterday, so what do you do? Oh, we're a language translation company. And they say, oh, Rich, what languages do you speak? Unfortunately, I only barely speak English. So I leave translation to the clever people. The reason because to do translation properly is very, very, very difficult. You need to be very qualified. If you ever know any translators, they've got brains the size of planets. These people are absolutely incredible. You need to know how to translate. You can only ever translate into your mother tongue, and you can only ever translate using your subject that you know about. So if you know about financial for the oil sector, and you're a Swedish national, you'll only ever translate into Swedish for that particular thing and so on. So very hard to find. It's a rare resource, unfortunately. Perhaps why that's expensive, but it's a rare resource that's in high demand. So that's what's happening. I was at an event in Bangalore in February this year, and quite a large event. And the guy introducing, similar to what you've done, the guy introducing the event stood on the lectern and said how proud he was that so many people had come to Bangalore. The event was probably 600 or 700 people. And he said it was no surprise because India's a growing economy and Bangalore's the Silicon Valley of India, they call it. And he stood there and said, we've got every single nationality in the room, we're so proud. He says, it's no wonder because there's so many people in Bangalore speak 5, 6, 7 languages. He said, can I have a show of hands who speaks more than 7 languages? 10, 20% of the audience put their hand up. He says, okay, let's have 5 or less, 5 or more, probably half the room. He said, okay, 3, quite a lot, 2. He said, let's have a joke, let's see who speaks 1 language. I was sitting on the front row, I thought, oh, this is my turn, put my hand up as far as it would go, like an idiot, and it's a strange feeling having 700 people laugh at you behind your back. I then, following that, had to talk about translation, so it's like, I don't know why I'm sharing that, but I guess it's a bit like therapy. Another question I get asked is, so do you use robots to do the translation? People think it's a mechanical thing. And I say, yes, this is my robot. He speaks 6 million languages, 6 million forms of communication. He's amazing. He's got him on overtime. He works 24/7. But the problem is C3PO doesn't actually exist. We can't use robots to do the translation. We have to use people in the process. Yes, we use technology. We use a lot of technology in terms of workflow, in terms of integration with the content creation system, which our colleagues in the content creation world are working hard to do. We need to integrate into that world. And yes, we remember what we translate before, so we don't necessarily need to translate the same thing twice. But we still need people in the process. It's still quite a people process. I then get the $1 million question about, well, why can't you just use Google Translate? Or why can't I just use Google Translate? It happens all the time. I lose projects to people using Google Translate, which is fine at what it does. But what it doesn't do is get your brand and rejig the linguistics to work in a different culture. That's why you need a professional translator or a professional brand consultant or copywriter to do. I lost a job in December to a guy translating packs of food. wanted to use Google Translate. Quite like the guy. It was only 12 products. I quite like the guy, so I did him a good deal. It was only, I think it was about £200 I went to charge him, which was probably at cost, absolute bargain. Why can't I use Google Translate, Rich? It's free. I say, well, you can if you want, but it won't be as good. We lost it to Google Translate, and I got so angry, I wrote a blog post that sort of went viral within our tiny world. So that's if you want to read about some examples of food translation gone wrong, have a look at the URL. If not, I've got a video for you that explains about the dangers of Google Translate. Hopefully it'll work.
Is the story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I like to take a minute, just sit right there, tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. Fresh Prince of Bel Air theme song. These are lyrics that we've heard a million times. But have we ever heard the lyrics to this song after they're put in Google Translate? Probably not, because that's ridiculous, and I have no idea why anyone would do that. But that's what we're all about at CDZA. So let's take the lyrics to the song and put it in Google Translate, and we'll translate it to the world's most spoken language, Mandarin Chinese. We'll take the results and then translate it back into English. All right, this is what the song would sound like. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Born and raised in West Philadelphia, on the playground where I spent my days. Cold, apricot, relaxing on pool. Shoot some b-ball outside of school. When a couple of guys, they do not get better, start making trouble in my neighborhood. A little afraid to hit me and my mom, she said, I whistled for a cab, and when it came near, press on the license plate so good, mirror dice. It could be anything I can say that this cab was rare, but I don't think you get it. Yo, home, Bel Air. I pulled the house about 7 or 8. I yelled, yo, home, smell you later, taxi driver. Looked at my king, I was finally there. Prince of Bel Air, sitting on my throne. That's great, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to take the lyrics to the song and
I'll stop it there because it goes on and on and on. What he does next, he adds in different languages and different language pairs. So he translates from Russian back into English and Portuguese back into English and so on. When you get the slide deck, you'll see the link in there. It's really worrying because they use their own engines. So they get the English into Chinese and using the same engine back into English again. It should be identical, but it's not. The danger is, if you use that particular thing, other tools are available, such as Bing's got perhaps a worse translator than Google, but other tools are available. But if you just use that and it looks like Chinese, I'll just publish it. You don't know what it's saying about your brand and your message, so that's a word of caution. It's fine if you want the gist, if you want to know what people are sort of saying about you on Twitter or things like that, but you need to take it with a pinch of salt. So where's this translation all coming from? Well, I've put in this site. This is genuinely out of one of my textbooks 20 years ago, and I studied economics at university I can't believe 20 years ago. But we were taught this sort of thing. What it is, they've taken the size of each country and scaled it, either shrunk it or expanded it, determined on their GDP, so on the total amount of goods and services that each country produces. So Great Britain's nice and big, obviously America's about the same size, and you look at that and it shows you the main economies in the world. So Japan's very large, United Kingdom's very large, obviously Germany and so on. I quite like it. I don't know if anyone remember Harry Enfield. It's a bit like the Mr. Chumley Warner. No, just me on that one, right? Okay. But this is what we were taught just 20 years ago. So if I'm, say, halfway through my career now, some of my initial learnings based on, well, it's only Western Europe that matters, maybe in the back of my head. We used to do projects at work, and all we ever used to do when we started the company 20 years ago was French, Italian, German and Spanish. So much so that we called them FIGs, French, Italian, German, Spanish. That was the acronym that we used to do it. It would be a joke, we literally get another job for FIGs, another job for FIGs, where we'd get products from the States, localise it in the UK for Western Europe, and that was it. What happens now is we do 20, 30, 40 languages at once. So the world's changed dynamically. The world's changed very, very quickly, but within our career, and it will continue to change as we move on. This is a piece of data from McKinsey that shows the centre of gravity of the world's GDP. So again, they've got each country worked out the GDP, so the total amount of goods and services that they produce, weighted it in terms of their population, and then worked out where the centre is in the world. 1,000 years ago, it was all the way over here in the east, and it gradually moves westwards. Post-World War II, moves close to America, and then it's turned around. Now, it's interesting because the orange line represents the fastest moving time in history. So obviously, we couldn't record more than, well, probably accurately more than a couple of hundred years ago, but you can see that it's moving very, very quickly. I worked it out a couple of nights ago, and it's moving at 140 kilometres a year towards the east. So at the moment, we're way halfway into Russia in terms of the central point. As we get further into the future, we'll move further and further towards the east. But those economies will develop quicker and quicker. 4 years ago, HSBC wrote a really good report about the world, about the top 30 economies, what the top 30 economies are going to look like in the year 2050. The link's on there, or you can Google it. It's quite well linked to, so you'll find it. 2 years ago, Karen Ward, who's an economist that works for these guys, updated it to the top 100 economies based on their predictions. In it, there's a league table. I've blown it up. I don't know if you can see it or not, but within the league table, this is the league table they think in 2050. So China, US, India. This year, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, China's reported GDP overtook that of the US. So we live in a world now where the largest economy in the world is China, from their own data, admittedly, but 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, that would have been a joke. People would have laughed at you if you'd suggested that. But it's real. The US is along with the largest economy in the world now. There's lots of opportunity outside English-speaking regions. So I've highlighted a few on here that have moved up, or they predict will move up considerably. So we look at Turkey, Philippines will move up 27 places, Egypt, 15 places, Malaysia, 17, Peru, 20 places. Now, admittedly, some of these economies are coming from a very low base, but as they move up and develop quickly, they'll be in the top 30 economies. So we're planning a product release worldwide. No longer will we be talking about figs, we'll be talking about, say, the top 30 economies, which has its own challenges. It's also important because 2 months ago in the September edition of the Harvard Business Review, the front page was all about moving your strategy from one location to another and developing a global strategy if you run a global company. And obviously part of that is language. So they're looking seriously at language strategy and particularly what lingua franca you should use for your business, and the effect that what language you speak in, what language you choose to talk in, be it German, French, English or Chinese, Mandarin or whatever, within your company will have a dramatic effect on the culture and therefore the profit at the bottom line. If you're running teams in different countries, I'll suggest you perhaps, again, you can Google it or you can download it. I think for $15 you can probably buy the magazine. It's well worth reading. So we used to call them brick economies. This was coined in 2003 and it's still around a little bit today, but it perhaps shouldn't be because there's issues with brick economies. So brick will be Brazil, Russia, India and China all lumped together. Now back in 2003, economists used to use this as like a scare story to show us that the world was developing outside of outside of the West really. But if we look at nowadays, we look at Brazil, there's issues with Brazil in terms of they're very reliant on commodities. A lot of oil they've just discovered, but they're very reliant on extracting that oil and selling it on the world market. The oil price is dropping at the moment. Russia, goodness, Russia's got problems. You have to think very carefully if you're going to invest in Russia or seriously invest in Russia at the moment. India has a lot of governance issues. And China, well, China's larger than all three put together. So China's 1.5 size of the other one. So suggesting that brick economies, they shouldn't really be lumped together anymore. That's even the guy, I can't remember the name of the guy, but the guy who coined the phrase says that perhaps it's left in the last decade a little bit. We now talk about mint economies. So Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria and Turkey. This is a report from Goldman Sachs where they say that those 4 economies will be in the top 15 economies in the world in the year 2050. So we think about Nigeria being one of the most important economies in the world quite quickly. That perhaps can shift maybe our global strategies or what we're thinking about internationalising our products. Obviously has different challenges in terms of brand management and content creation and even in our world in language translation. So perhaps there are economies that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of that are going to develop quickly. What I wanted to do as well, I've drawn on here, each colour is a billion people. Just get an idea of the sense of the scale of the world and the scale of the world outside of our tiny world in the Shire. So we've got a billion people in each colour. And then I thought, well, if I draw a circle on that bit, what's that circle represent? Pop quiz. So there's more people, believe it or not, who live inside that circle than live outside of that circle. So we saw through the McKinsey report how the centre of the world is moving eastwards. Well, maybe that's why, because we've got so many people living there. Now, as these economies develop, they're going to require certain things. What's going to happen is, at the moment, we live in the digital economy, so everything's digitised. So as economies such as Nigeria and the Philippines and Malaysia, people like that, as they develop, everything's digital. So if they need to put in a telephone network, they'll put in masts instead of doing it up the road. If they need access to information, the information will be digital. They won't necessarily need to print it. We all remember the days of, well, perhaps you don't, I'm showing my age now, but I remember my granddad making a major investment in Encyclopaedia Britannica. Something like, it was a month's salary, something like £500 this thing was. And there were books, white books like this, a big row of books. I remember vividly him saying to me, this son's your education. When I die, you can have half. I've got a brother. He says, when I die, you can have half of these, and you can learn about, well, half, you can learn about half of any topic that you want to. Awesome. Then what happened? What replaced Britannica? Microsoft bought out a thing called Encarta, didn't they, on CD? And they sold it for a couple $100. Then they sold it for $20, and they gave it away for free on the front of magazines. And if you bought Office, you got Encarta with it for free. And then Wikipedia happened. So we've got the access to information now is astonishing. Yeah, you got it on your iPhone, exactly. Google anything. We go back 20 years, 20, 30 years. Things like that seem to be magic, but that's what's happened. So this is the environment that these economies will develop in. So they won't go through the same curve, through pain that we went through. They'll develop very, very quickly. Technology can be replicated as well. So we see the Chinese creating a lot of technology, especially Korean companies. A lot of technology being created out there. There's more patents filed outside the US than inside. So there's lots of innovation that's going on. The process to innovation could be taught. So the process of innovation can be replicated and put into different places. So because of all that, what used to happen was if you controlled the technology, you could control the world, but now technology can be replicated. So the thing that's going to matter in the future, and it's probably starting to matter now, is population size. So if we look at Nigeria with 400 million people living in it, or India with 1.3 billion, or China with 1.4 billion in the future, enormous population that's going to control a lot of the wealth in the economy, in the world economy. What they'll need as they'll develop quickly, and it suggests that their middle class will grow quicker, so there'll be very, very large middle classes develop in all of these economies. They'll need services. Now, way back in 2004 when I did my MBA, my marketing professor came in one day all excited and he said, this is the year it's happened. Oh, what is it, John? He says, it's happened. The UK consumer is now spending more disposable income on services than products. Fair enough. But that was 2004 was the year it happened to the UK economy, where we spend more on services and products. Think about your own personal life, you probably do it now, but sure these two lines crossed and then separated. So it'll happen in these economies as well. So they'll need services such as healthcare services and financial services and education and leisure, etc., etc., and they'll be imported in. So if you're in those types of worlds that can be replicated very easily to be put into a different region, you've got enormous opportunities in the developing world next 20, 30 years until they can develop it themselves. I suggest they're going to draw talent away from us as well, especially around the world of governance and running companies. We saw on a similar slide earlier, I said that India's got issues around governance. Well, if companies and economies are growing very quickly, they'll all have issues based around, especially company governance and running governments and things like that. So I think the UK is perfectly positioned in all this. I think we're maybe through serendipity or through our leaders or whatever, depending on what side of the fence you sit. But we're now the fastest growing economy in the developed world. The Eurozone's got its problems, America's got issues, we've got low unemployment, low inflation. This is just recently, wage inflation has overtaken inflation again, which hasn't happened for about 5 or 6 years. Maybe bad news for business owners, but it's good news for Joe Public, for man on the street. Low interest rates. I saw a presentation an hour ago about low tax rates, how to avoid tax or manage your tax payments. You know how to do it properly, you can pay very low tax. Brand Britain's very strong. I'm very lucky in my job. I get to travel through different countries all the time. Everybody wants to talk to me about what it's like in England. I don't know if it's Harry Potter, if it's the Queen, if it's the Olympics or whatever it is, or everything probably all mixed up in a big pot. People want to buy our products. People want to see what it's like. People want to come here. People want to work here. And lastly, we have our own currency, a stable currency, which has got us out of a lot of trouble. So we use this slide a lot in our industry, and it says, if I'm selling to you, I speak your language. If I'm buying from you, you'd better speak German. So I get this thing. Another question I get asked as well is like, well, why should I translate things? Because the whole world speaks English. Well, no, they don't. If you travel the world, you can go, well, here we go, I've got a slide on this, but you can go to France and nearly nobody speaks English. It's only the people who you communicate with. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you know what I mean. So if you're going to sell products abroad, they need to be in the language of the consumer. One of the key things in any business is communicating effectively with your consumer and getting to understand them and understanding their needs and wants and things like that and putting that on there. You'll see on here, 22% of Spain can hold a conversation in English. Maybe it's because we only go to Costa del Sol or play golf in certain places that we get a different view of the country, but we're going to sell to the Spanish consumer, we need to translate into Spanish or Catalan or whatever language that particular region's talking in. If you get it right, you'll be a national hero. You'll win the Queen's Award for exports. One of my friends just has. He makes toilets and sinks, a fantastic product, exporting it all over the world. Get it wrong, you'll be a laughingstock. Here's some sort of comedy translations. This is a cooking book, Lady Called Pooh. So they called the book Cooking with Pooh. Oh dear. This is off a restaurant in China, some spicy grandma. That's in Japan. So I don't know if that's a spelling error or bad translation, but it's ridiculous anyway. It's a food product for a particular niche, very, very small niche. But I guess everybody likes noodles. This is a drink. I had all this translated back. It's in, I don't remember if it's Czech or Slovak. We had it translated back. It's actually drink designed for the older gentleman who's got problems with his waterworks. So I can sort of see what they were saying. It's got cranberry juice in it or whatever, but I can sort of see what they were saying, but it kind of got the translation wrong on that. And then my own favourite, some pea cola from Ghana. Delicious. So if you're going to pick a language partner, here's my top tips. I'm obviously really biased, but these are my top tips for you guys. I'd say, first of all, pick one that fits for you. So there's a whole spectrum of different companies as there is in any sector. Some are just in one region, some are worldwide, some have got links with all the associations, some haven't. Pick one that fits your brand, pick one that you get on with, maybe test a few out first and then before you get married to somebody. There's single vendors and multiple language vendors, so there's some companies who just do one particular language and do it very well. There's other companies who will manage an international product, an international product launch, things like that. Again, horses for courses really on that. And there's big companies and small companies. What tends to happen is the big ones sub it all out to the little ones anyway, and the small fish feed off the big fish within the industry. Sure, it's the same in everything. I'd suggest that you need to build a partnership with the firm, because if the firm's going to replicate what you're doing in the UK or the US or some other English-speaking regions, they need to understand you, understand your ethics, understand your mission, and then understand the consumer, but understand the consumer in a different culture. So in order to do that, there needs to be a partnership approach. So it can take quite a while to build up, but once it has, it can really bear fruit. And it's a good resource having a team of translators, because you can test stuff. So if you're releasing a particular product in a particular market, you've already got a team there who will be in country and native speakers. They may not be your demographic, but at least they're going to show you, well, what's going to work and what's going to not work. So something like Cooking with Pooh or pea cola, you should hopefully weed that out at the first stage and gate. It should certainly not get onto shelf. And I think it's best if we use an agile approach. That's what we try and do all the time. So We got quite a few clients. One of our main clients we help them to localise their food products. I can't tell you who it is, I'm NDA'd, but they've got 8,000, 10,000 food products which we're localising for the world. So what we do, we have an agile management process on that. So every 2 weeks, we and all the other stakeholders get together and talk about what happened. We talk about that sprint, that iteration, and we go through and try and improve the process. And we've been on it for 18 months now. After 18 months, the process is pretty slick. We managed to improve processes across the whole supply chain and with other stakeholders in the project as well. This is a slide I stole from a guy I know very well, but it's drilling home the point of that if we change the source text at the time of translation, it's going to cost us $10, or rather cost our clients $10. If we change the source text at time of authoring, the comparative cost will be $1. If we change it right at the time when we're gathering data for the product, so before we've actually created the English content, it costs us 10 cents or 20 cents. So if we integrate the translation process into the content creation process, or even the process of generating the products, it costs a lot less. Obviously, if you change something when it's on shelf, or when it's on site, or anything like that, it's going to cost you a lot of money to product recall and redo packaging and things like that. So integrate translation into your workflows. And we use this a lot, but yeah, translation's like toilet paper. You don't know you need it till you need it. Again, it's best if you integrate it into your workflows. And that's half an hour, so that's it. Thank you very much. We're on stand E54. Come and see us, we'll have a cup of tea. Or if there's any questions. I'm here all afternoon anyway, so awesome. Thank you for your time. Cheers.